Hi, welcome everybody to our Hong Kong Online Open Day of CEU Executive MBA. I'm Thomas Lamel, the Senior Program Manager, and I will guide you through this evening if you're joining us from Southeast Asia or through this noon time if you're joining us from Europe. The procedure of this evening is pretty straightforward and simple. I will start with the program presentation, and our guests will have the opportunity to meet one of our current participants. After meeting and engaging with our current participant, you are happy to enjoy our keynote presentation by Professor Yusuf Akbar on knowledge sharing and organizational resilience in a post-COVID world. You will then have the opportunity to interact and challenge Professor Akbar intellectually. And in the end, as a conclusion of this event, we will have a Q&A session when you'll have the opportunity to ask questions about the program and stuff. You're always welcome to use the chat box in Zoom or raise your hand if you have any questions. And I will collect the questions for the Q&A session in the end. So let's get started, I think. So let's start with the basic question, with the elephant in the room in these crazy times. The question is an MBA still worth it? That we are witnessing fundamental transformations in the world in a century. In 2008, we've seen a big financial crisis. In 2015, we've seen a large refugee crisis. And right now, we are facing the biggest pandemic in a century. And these changes are part of a much broader set of transformation that is taking place right now. Some of them are positive, of course, but some of them are pretty dangerous, to be honest. So the key question is, how do you as business professionals prepare for this challenging and unpredictable environment? And the next obvious question, the even more important question is an MBA the way to do it? Because over the last year, we have seen an explosion of online education. And I'll show you why we believe that our executive MBA is worth it. So if you're interested in further education, you usually start searching for an MBA in the city you live in. That's just a logical step. What you tend to find is mostly a pretty standard curriculum, a pretty standard vanilla MBA curriculum. The faculty who are delivering the program are mostly local, not international. Then, speaking of internationality, the number of international students is relatively low. And some programs, especially in Western Europe or in the United States or in the United Kingdom, can be quite expensive, starting at 80,000 euro of tuition. And a local program allows you to not leave your job. If you contrast that with the top business schools in the world, what they offer is that they often have a very differentiated, very mission-driven MBA curriculum. They offer a very certain expertise or a certain perspective with their curriculum. Because of their full-time format, their student body is truly internationally, actually. But you are leaving the labor market for 1 or even 2 years, which is an additional financial burden in addition to your tuition. And these programs, speaking of tuition, are rather expensive at more than 100 or 120,000 euro or dollars on average. And another thing that you might need to consider is that you need to move your family to the new MBA location. So what we do at CEU is to offer the best of 2 worlds to you. There is no work interruption, thanks to the practical and flexible modular format. I will explain the modular format and I will show it later. The executive MBA for the open world is mission-driven. I will talk about our philosophy about the executive MBA for the open world philosophy later. We have an international student body because of this modularity of the program. people are actually able to fly in and fly out, coming from all over the world because of the modularity of the program. And according to the Times Higher Education, we are the second most international university in the world. So I would like to introduce some of our faculty members to you. If you're new to finance, for example, Joy is a uniquely gifted educator. Generation after generation of our students tell us how she's just unique in explaining complex financial concepts. Or for economics, Mark Kaufmann, an expert in applied theory with a PhD from Harvard. For leadership, you will get to know Austin, our world-class psychologist with executive education experience on 4 continents. He will lead the way. Or Sophia Baranier, an expert on the future of work, which relates to automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics, with a PhD from the London School of Economics. Another good example of our academic expertise is our faculty director, Maciej Kiszlowski, an expert on regulation and non-market strategy with degrees from a JST degree from Yale, an MBA from INSEAD, and an MPA from Princeton. For the course on big data and artificial intelligence will be taught by Miklos Koren, one of the leading scholars in the field in Europe and the world, with the Harvard PhD. Professor Isosenius with a PhD from the US, from Central Florida. She's an expert on marketing, especially emotional marketing. She will teach you on these essential topics. Or if you're already experienced in finance, you'll be placed in the advanced track course with Adam Zawodowski, a leading expert on complex investments with a PhD from Princeton. And last but not least, for innovation, you'll have Mike Labelle, who holds a prestigious EU Jean Monnet chair. Here is just to give you an example of our visiting faculty. Some of our visitors, for example, Christian Zelos on innovation from Stanford University, Miklos Savary from Columbia University, and distinguished expert on digital marketing. We have Omar Hernandez flying in to teach your modules from Berkeley Business School. We have Professor Hui Chen from the University of Zurich to teach you. And we have, among others, of course, Dr. Milena Nikolova, Chief Behavior Officer of Behavior Smart, to teach you. So here's what the program looks like. The dates that you see on the screen right now are not going to change. So you can basically plan your studying around professional and family activities based on these dates. As you might have noticed, we have 3 modules in the first year, 4 in the second year, and 3 in the third year, which gives you full flexibility and a balance in your life. We are piggybacking around popular European holidays like May 1st or November 1st or August 15th, when it's easier for you to take time off and leave your job for the modules. In the summers, in the second column, you see that our bespoke and cutting-edge leadership program takes place on our Budapest campus, and you'll have the opportunity to benefit from electives from the faculty in the world. We invite you to teach your classes. So one day when you're done with the program, with the executive MBA, there will come the day when you finish eventually with us and join the CEU alumni from around the world. As I already said, CEU is the second most international university in the world, and you can rely on an active elite network on every continent. We have city-level chapters, we have country-level chapters. Basically, wherever you are in the world, you'll find CEU alumni to interact with. And just to give you an impression of the size and accessibility of our network, the Alumni Network consists of more than 18,000 professionals, basically everywhere in the world. And they're easily accessible through social media, through LinkedIn groups, through Facebook groups, and of course, through our alumni relations office. So if you want to make new friends, if you want to network with CEU alumni, it's very easy to do so. And the network is a network that you can count on, and one of the key assets that we have. So the question is, how are we able to offer such a high quality program with faculty coming from Ivy League universities and the best universities in Europe and Asia to teach at only 29,000 euros of tuition? There's a simple answer. The answer lies in our founder and benefactor, George Soros, who created Central European University with the mission to promote open society. Just recently, George Soros made a further contribution to Central European University's mission by offering another $1 billion in endowment to create the Open Society University Network with universities in Asia and Europe and across the world, which means we are the best endowed university in Europe. So what does the executive MBA for the open world mean? What does CEU make unique? First of all, when we talk about the open world, we mean skepticism towards dogmas, towards hierarchies, towards privileges, both in context of how we teach, but also in composition of the cohort. Diversity is key to creating a successful program, and it's not an empty marketing catchphrase for us. Secondly, we believe in debate and radical rational thinking. Every idea can be challenged. We believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives and fake news, because it's narratives that create polarization in our societies these days. And we believe the best way to challenge this narrative-based discourse is to make arguments based on facts and realities, which is the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of open societies. We are fundamentally opposed to all kinds of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. It is our DNA to promote diversity in the program. And the way we finance the scholarship means we create opportunities for people who traditionally might not have been able to actually join such a program. And one thing that makes us unique from other programs is that we see managers as not just as people who deal with businesses or resources, but also we believe that managers go beyond that. They are positive change agents, whatever their cultural, linguistic, or professional background is. Everybody can contribute to open societies. So what does the typical CEU executive MBA classroom look like? Currently, we have, in the current cohort, we have 65 managers with an average of 14 years of work experience, including a minimum of 3 years of leadership or managerial experience. As you can see from the background image, we use state-of-the-art classroom technology and setups in order to facilitate discussion and interaction in class. We make use of case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you would find in local MBA programs, because we want to take you, experts in your specific field, from this level of functional expertise to the strategic level. So what does the top quality online experience look like? Of course, we are offering a hybrid format. If every participant can choose to join online, if traveling is restricted, if you're afraid to travel, if no visas are being issued, there are manifold reasons to join online. We have invested in studio-grade microphones, capturing lecturer and all participants. For us, the second part is kind of even more important because, I mean, it's kind of obvious to capture lecturers, of course, but we also emphasize on capturing your participants because the learning experience is not a one-way street. It's not a one-way street from the lecturer to the participant. It's also a learning experience from the participant to the lecturer, but overall a learning experience among participants, among fellows, because there's so much that you will learn from your fellows from different backgrounds in your class. We have invested in large screens and high quality cameras to offer the best experience when it comes to the quality of the audiovisual quality. We have created physical virtual breakout rooms for support teams. Support teams are an essential part of our concept. Of course, group work and teamwork is important for the modules. But another thing where we add diversity is that you will be placed in these support teams in a very diverse matter. So you won't be placed in a group with people coming from the same industry, coming from the same country, with the same language, in order to expose you proactively to diversity. Because this is where the real learning kicks in. This is where you will learn to understand people coming from different backgrounds, having different solution processes, decision-making processes, and different approaches on businesses and society. We have created personalized virtual backgrounds that you will see in the next picture, and high-quality individual support on every level of your journey with us. Speaking of the personalized virtual backgrounds, here you can see the current cohort. As you can see, there is some information. First of all, you can see your fellows, not just hear them, you can see them. So it's important for you who said what, who's interacting in class, of those people joining online, of course. And you can see the support teams by the color code. You can see on one side who belongs to which team, and that's basically the essence of it. So tuition is 29,000 euro, as I already mentioned, for the whole program, and it includes all the credits. In order to defray your other costs, we have special rates negotiated with partner hotels in Vienna and Budapest, ranging from the budget level to the luxury level. And we have negotiated discount rates with Austrian Airlines and Lufthansa Group to bring you to Vienna or Budapest at a discounted rate. Of course, as I already said, online option is available if travel is inconvenient or impossible for you. So I would like to join, and I would like to invite you to join the open world, be part of it, and contribute to the open world. The application deadline is March 27th, 2022, and the application starts online on our website. However, I strongly encourage you to apply as soon as possible, because we have a first come, first served policy. So the sooner you apply, the sooner you submit and complete your application, the sooner we can process your application, the sooner we can invite you to the interview, and the sooner you will receive an admission decision, which will only take a couple of weeks for you to get it. You're invited to book a one-on-one consultation with me to discuss your questions and optimize your applications, or if you have any question on individual scholarships and financial support, I think that's the better way to discuss your individual situation. I will post the link to the one-on-one consultation in the chat later. So for now, I would like to conclude my program presentation, and I would like to come to the next part of our open day, which is your interaction with the current participant. I would like very much to introduce Shabnam Sharmatova to you. She's a current participant. She's a project consultant at the Creative Central Asian Network and an external consultant in the arts and culture field. Thank you very much, Shabnam, for joining us tonight or today, depending on where you are in the world right now. If you could briefly introduce yourself, give us an insight on where you're coming from, what your background is, and your motivation, why you chose CEU back then.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Thomas, for inviting. Yes, I would be very happy to share my experience because it's very exciting. I'm very excited that I joined this program. And I really recommend you all guys listening from outside of, from your computers, because it's really great investment. And starting from the first question, so my background is in the nonprofit field, and I've been working in the fields of arts and culture for more than 10 years. And I'm mostly work as a manager. And so all the time when I was working in this field, I felt that this great need still persistent of need for change and transformation, and especially I had this need of bringing different sectors together, and I was always working on how to build this open community and diverse community, so it won't be just arts people or culture people. So that's why I even pursued a master's in the arts and the museum management, but still I had this sense of that I should continue, because I didn't have this entrepreneurial business background, and this was lacking even in this arts management program, because it's mostly based on nonprofit nonprofit strategies, which is good, but still if you want to bring in a different way of working and bring in transformation and really see change, so that's I think that's why I really had this idea of applying for MBA. And when I started researching and looking for available programs, like Thomas, you said that really it's not that many options, especially for people with a nonprofit business background. So I was kind of not sure if I would be accepted at all. And so then I just looked around and I found this program, which is amazing, perfect match for me, because first of all, because of my background, and the program is so open for transformation and open for bringing different people, which is exactly what I've got right now, such an amazing group of people right now. And we're all very supportive and we learn a lot from each other. And another reason is that the program offers diverse options for scholarship and fellowships. And because I don't have business background, I didn't have that much of money, because most of the MBA programs are very expensive, so I wouldn't be able to afford it. And it's really very helpful that CEU and the program offers these options, as well. I hope yes, I answered, but I can continue. There are many other reasons, but I can continue talking. So
don't stop. No, seriously. Thank you very much for giving us insight. I mean, I think you're basically one of the best examples in class to show our diversity, and not just as a token, but just to emphasize on the attractiveness of the program to people. You are coming from a non-corporate field. Of course, we have people coming from blue chip companies and from the corporate field, like IBM and Morgan Stanley and Siemens and Novartis and Eli Lilly, etc.
Right.
But the program, is also dedicated to people who are not coming from the traditional corporate field, but coming from NGOs, from the public sector, from arts and culture, from the medical, from engineering. So it will take everybody, whatever your professional expertise, from your level of functional expertise to the strategic level, because I think this is what everybody needs. No matter if you're in a corporate position, or if you're in an NGO focusing on human rights, or if you're in the public sector, you need leadership skills at some point, whatever your profession is. And I think you're the best example, the perfect example to illustrate this.
Thank you.
You already mentioned the fellowships and scholarships. Of course, I'm pretty much sure that this is going to be a question in the Q&A session, so I'm not going to answer it right now. But just to give you an example on how we are committed to the region, we have international fellowships for people around the world, and we have dedicated fellowships for business women in Central Asia. So we are committed to the region already. We have a fellowship for India. We have a fellowship for China in the pipeline, which is not out there, but it's in the pipeline. So we know the needs. We listen to our alumni community. We listen to everybody giving us recommendations in order to, empower and encourage even more diversity to the program. You're also a perfect example when it comes to nationalities and, to show our globalized world. You're from Tajikistan originally, yes. Right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yes, I am from Tajikistan, Dushanbe, and I've traveled a lot in the past. Yes, but currently I'm based in Budapest. So
Right, you lived in the US in San Francisco, as far as I remember.
yes,
And,
I lived in San Francisco, in New York, and then in Kyrgyzstan, and yeah, and finally now in Budapest.
I mean, it shows like the international profile our participants have, and that we have people flying in from 5 continents despite of the Corona crisis. We have people flying in from as far away as Vancouver or Vladivostok. We have people, one a participant from flying in from Malaysia. We have Australians in the program, from India, from South Africa, even from the Middle East. So it's an international program with a lot of diversity. Shabnam, is there anything else that you would like to mention?
I just would love to tell people that it's really you should devote all your time and really to think about it, because there is no concern. When I saw this program and the description, I said, that's it, this is my program, I'm gonna go for it. And when I got this, even when I got the scholarship, I was so excited and happy. So guys, feel free to even email me if you have any questions. So of course you feel free, or Thomas, feel free to post my email. I would be happy to answer their questions as well.
I'm happy you're happy, because you guys are the reason why we are doing this job. We want, everything we do is to make a better learning experience for you and to constantly improve our services and the academic quality of the program. Shabnam, I know you're busy. You have to go back to work. Thank you very much for joining us. I would like to move to the next part of today's session, to our keynote presentation by Professor Yusuf Akbar on knowledge sharing and organizational resilience in a post-COVID world. Just to introduce Yusuf Akbar briefly to you, he's Associate Professor of Strategy. He has published over 40 journal articles, 4 books, and numerous contributions to academic and professional research in strategy and international business. He's the founding editor of the International Journal of Emerging Markets and an advisor to governmental authorities. His consulting and professional references include Citibank, Deutsche Telekom, Siemens, Texas Instruments, and Toyota, among many, many others. Thank you for joining us, Yusuf. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Hello, everybody, wherever you are in the world today. I just would like to take a few minutes of your time to talk about an issue which I think is slowly unfolding in front of our eyes. Before I get into this discussion about resilience and anti-fragility, I want to make another point about the importance of diversity in this program. And it's related totally to the idea I want to talk with you about today, which is about knowledge sharing. So the great strength of having a very diverse group of participants is that many of the problems you might find in your particular domain of activity, your space, that there may not be answers from your existing knowledge. But by being part of a diverse group of people, you can actually find solutions from people from completely outside of your space. And it's often these new perspectives and the sharing of these new perspectives in the classroom and outside of the classroom, which I think is really, truly dynamite. I'll give you one example of the importance of knowledge sharing within an executive MBA class. One of our participants who became a very, very important senior leader at Philips, the Dutch conglomerate, who had come up through a very traditional corporate career, Deutsche Telekom, so forth and so forth, ended up working for GE Healthcare in a global transformation role. And one of the things he said to me after he had graduated, he said, very often I would come at a business problem with a certain set of perspectives and sort of lenses, if you like. And he said one of the things he got from the executive MBA was he would have conversations about the challenges he faced in the business world, and he would talk to someone from a not-for-profit or a public sector orientation, and they would come up with solutions which he would never have thought about before. So I think that's another really important reason why being part of this highly diverse executive MBA is great from a knowledge perspective. So let's get right into it. I'm sure you have either experienced personally or you've seen images like this in front of you, empty shelves, in supermarkets and other retail contexts, but also in B2B context in terms of supply. And of course, we're all getting worried about this. What's happening? What's going on? Why is this occurring? And it's occurring for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the world's manufacturing capital, China, the cost of shipping from China has skyrocketed over the last few months, right? So for a whole bunch of reasons, it's very, very hard to get a container at a price which doesn't completely, run down the bank account, right? So that's one of the first reasons we have this issue. And if you look at this here, you've got various routes out of Shanghai to various parts of the world, and you can see this very, very sharp appreciation in the cost of container shipping. Yeah. This shows you the price for an average 40-foot container. So in September 2019, it was under $2,000, probably about $1,000 and a bit, $1,000 and change. And by July of this year, that had got close to $9,000, right? So that just gives you an idea of the extraordinary increase in the cost of getting goods from China to market. So we've got what you might call a container shipping crisis unfolding. And we've also got another thing that's taking place, and is now being called the Great Resignation. What is happening is unprecedentedly large numbers of people have decided to quit their current job, partially because of the lockdown and the separation and the changes that have occurred due to the pandemic. And you can just see here just the numbers. I saw a number yesterday. I haven't had an opportunity to fully verify that number, but I think some estimates suggest that around 41% of the global labor force are considering quitting their jobs, right? So you've got a shipping crisis, you've got the Great Resignation, and then you've got a third factor on top, which is as economies have been moving out of the hard lockdowns of the pandemic and moving towards more nuanced forms of restrictions, such as, lockdowns for the unvaccinated, we're seeing an unprecedented increase in demand. So you've got both a supply side problem, a shortage of labor and a shortage of containers, and you've got an unprecedented rebound from the lockdowns of the pandemic. And so an increasing discussion we're having in companies is this concept of anti-fragility, because one thing this pandemic has taught us is that the entire global strategy of the world's most successful companies from the turn of the 20th century to today, 2 decades, has been basically on the following premise. We find the lowest cost locations which are as closely connected to the global supply chain as possible. We produce at the lowest possible cost, and we sell at the highest possible price so we can build in margin. And of course, the solution was we do our production in Asia, predominantly China, although, in the last 10 years, that has kind of expanded beyond China as the cost of doing business in China has gone up. But what the COVID pandemic has taught us is that globally configured, efficiency-driven value chains are incredibly fragile and are subject to disruptions that not only affect the industry specifically, but have profound ripple effects throughout the economy. And so as we're entering a kind of post-pandemic context, companies are looking to build value chains that are somewhat protected against this disruption. And what I'd like to talk about now is what exactly does this mean in practice? And this is the concept of anti-fragility. And essentially there are 3 pillars to anti-fragility. The first pillar is developing a new business model. So what many industries have learned from the pandemic is the traditional ways in which we monetize our activities are being reconsidered. I'll give you a very simple example here, which we can all understand. You think about live music, right? So the live music industry, if you remember when we shifted from CDs, which you would buy in a record shop, to streaming, or downloads and then to streaming, the music industry was in a crisis, right? And one of the solutions for the music industry faced with that crisis was, well, let's make more of our money on merchandise and performance. Now, what the pandemic has done is it's kind of severely impacted the performance side of the business. So the live music industry has faced the challenge of finding new ways to monetize music. And they've done that through digital subscriptions and streamed online concerts, which is an interesting innovation. So for example, in the first quarter of this year, online music subscription revenues increased by 70% year on year. So that's a dramatic increase. And of course, companies like Spotify, to name one, have done incredibly well out of that change. So the first pillar of anti-fragility is rethink the business model to limit the fragility of the way you generate value. The second, which I'm going to talk more about today, is improving what we call value chain visibility. And what we mean by that is we have to build a comprehensive knowledge sharing strategy for our entire value chain, so we can anticipate potential disruptions. So we share knowledge about our goals, our motivations, and we're much more honest about the limitations of our partnership. So can we deliver what we need on time? I'll give you a micro anecdote. In my apartment building where I live in Vienna, we have this very nice elevator. One of the reasons why we bought the place, it has a nice elevator. And on our floor, the third floor, the button that you press on the Otis elevator, the button fell out. And it hasn't been replaced for more than a month. So of course, me being a business school professor, I'm always interested in why these things don't work the way they do. So of course, I got onto the phone to my condominium company, and I said, "Listen, you make me pay every month X hundred euros for condominium charges. Why hasn't my button on my elevator been fixed?" And they told me because the parts that are produced for this particular button are stuck in China and cannot get out, and they won't be replaced until they arrive. That's just a micro example of exactly this problem. Now, if our partners can let us know ahead of time, listen, we're not going to be able to get this out because the Chinese government have just shut down Ningbo port because one person got coronavirus last week. We're stuck for 3 weeks. If we know that, anti-fragility suggests we can find other ways of getting what we need to our customers. The third pillar is what we call accelerating digital transformation. Many of you I know already are going through this process in your organizations of converting more and more of the knowledge that we have into digital form. Anti-fragility calls for an ever greater acceleration of digital transformation. And this occurs at both the individual and company level and ecosystem level, right? So we have to create this kind of digital mindset to enable us to be more flexible, to experiment, and to innovate, which is necessary for anti-fragility. This is an Ernst & Young survey that they carried out recently, and they asked senior executives, what's your top priority in the next 1 to 3 years, and your top priority next year. And you can see the top 3 are, manage, reduce costs, plus ça change, but we've got increased visibility, increased responsiveness and resiliency, which is anti-fragility, and diversify and segment our suppliers, right? So instead of having the most efficient, globally configured, lean supply chain, we are actually moving back to a situation where we may actually have a less lean supply chain, and we may have more suppliers available, which comes at a cost. And that's something that perhaps, if we want to, we can get into in the Q&A. So now let's focus on this idea of value chain visibility. And the essence of this is this concept of knowledge sharing. And knowledge sharing as I'm sure you'll understand readily, occurs at 3 different levels, right? So we've got individual level, inter-employee knowledge sharing, where we share information with each other about what's going on, right? That's pretty straightforward. And then organizationally, our organizations create knowledge management systems, right? Where we make information available to the entire organization through some kind of secured data information repository. We have technologies which enable us to do that. And then we have the broadest form of knowledge sharing, which is ecosystem or value chain level, right? Which is where we create systems for inter-organizational information sharing, right? So if you think about a lovely example of this, you think about complex manufacturing systems where you have a highly integrated vertical value chain, where you have an assembler and then a series of first, second, third, fourth tier suppliers, right? That requires a very high level of inter-organizational information sharing, both technological, innovation, supply chain, logistics, and so on. So that's what we're talking about in that context. And so if you look at the overall knowledge management process, we've got these 6 different aspects, but because of time and because of the focus of our research, I want us to look at this issue of sharing of knowledge and insights with other members of your organization and outside. And so in our research, we're basically looking at a set of relationships between knowledge sharing, anti-fragility, and performance, right? So let me just work you through the obvious relationships here. So we've got a bunch of direct relationships. So we know that organizations that share knowledge better are less fragile for the reasons I've discussed, right? We're able to anticipate risks, we can manage disruptions more effectively. We also know from a very, very extensive literature that organizations that share knowledge perform better. And performance, of course, is a multidimensional thing. It can include things like financial performance, but it can also include things such as innovation performance, new product development, employee satisfaction, and so on, right? So it's a multidimensional concept. And what we're arguing is that actually being anti-fragile will also enhance your performance, right? So that's a kind of new spin on this discussion, because most of the time before we got to the pandemic, it was always about efficiency improves performance. But what we're arguing actually is anti-fragility improves performance at the organizational, the ecosystem, and employee level. And then there's also an indirect relationship, which is a little bit nuanced, right? Which is the following. If we're good at knowledge sharing, we enhance our anti-fragility. And the anti-fragility leads to better performance, right? So it's not just a direct relationship, it's a mediated relationship, which we're also examining in the research. Now, we've got our relationships, but then there's also a very important aspect here, which is, what are the factors which would, what technically we call moderate the relationship between knowledge sharing and anti-fragility. And these are what, I would call in more simple terms like background conditions. And we believe that essentially there are 2 sets of background conditions that moderate the ability of knowledge sharing to contribute to anti-fragility. The first are the shared values, or what you might call culture, in your organization and within your ecosystem, right? So, does your ecosystem, does your organization, do your employees have innovative values when they perform? Do they trust each other? All right, so is knowledge sharing something that goes on because actors within the ecosystem, people within the organization, employees amongst themselves trust each other to share knowledge? That's the first background condition. The second background condition is to do with competitive resources, right? And in particular, 2 competitive resources, which are financial resources and IT technologies, right? So if you just go down to the bottom of my slide because of time and to allow for some questions here, we've got 2 potential moderating factors at work here, right? So knowledge sharing contributes more to anti-fragility if we have an innovative culture in the company, right? That's one moderating factor. The other moderating factor is knowledge sharing contributes to anti-fragility better if we have the IT infrastructure in place, which allows us to do knowledge management and data analytics. Okay, so that's the basis of the ideas, right? So that organizations and ecosystems that invest in anti-fragility resources and that are able to build and develop anti-fragility shared values are more likely to cope better with future disruptions than companies that don't make those kinds of investments, right? So that's our key argument in our research. But I want to emphasize, as I come to my concluding thoughts here, that knowledge sharing is only one piece of this puzzle, right? So it's not just about creating visibility, it's also about business model re-engineering. And crucially, and I think this is, perhaps the one area which I think is causing the most anxiety among executives, is we may have to learn to live with the idea that in the future, instead of having this like super lean, super configured, super efficient global value chain, we're going to have spare resources that are not being fully utilized at any moment in time, because they will act as pressure valves in the case of future disruptions. Thanks very much. How about some time for some questions? Back to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Our participants are invited to raise their hands and speak out loudly. I've collected some of their questions in the chat box, so I will start with those questions. The first one, what is more important in mediating knowledge sharing, IT infrastructure and data analytics, or organizational values / culture around sharing knowledge?
Good question. So I think one needs the other, right? So there's a symbiotic relationship between the two. So if you have a healthy culture around knowledge sharing, both among employees at the organizational level and in the ecosystem, that's a really good start. But what you also need is you need the IT technology and the data analytic capabilities to be able to deliver on that positive culture. And likewise, even if you've got the technology set up, if you don't have trust among employees within the organization and across the ecosystem, your IT systems and your data analytics capabilities is not going to be fully utilized.
Okay. Another question is, what impact on profitability is there from the concept of anti-fragility? What should shareholders expect in this regard?
Here, I think, is the biggest challenge. Again, if you think about the strategy textbook that we've been teaching generations of MBAs, is this idea: you minimize your cost, you charge as high a price as possible, and it's the margin which which determines your success. So if you're on the cost side of the business, you're constantly looking for ways to reduce costs, to squeeze out inefficiency in your value chain. In this post-pandemic world, shareholders may have to get used to the idea that the kind of profitability we've seen before the pandemic may not be assured in the same way in the future if we want to limit the impact of disruptions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Yusuf. In view of the time, I would like to move on to the Q&A session. Will you be with us for the Q&A session, Yusuf?
Yeah, I can hang around for probably about 10 more minutes, and then I have to make
Perfect. That's the time frame I was planning to for the Q&A session. So let's start with a question right for you. Is there a thesis, and what about exams in the executive MBA program?
Great question. So, an MBA degree is a general management degree, so you cover a multiple range of different disciplines. Some disciplines, more quote unquote traditional ones, economics, finance, accounting, they'll probably get you to do exams because they'll be testing your quantitative knowledge. Whereas, on the other side, subjects such as leadership, perhaps some aspects of marketing and so on, they'll be more experiential. So you'll be looking to do more kind of experiential learning, team activities, simulations, and so on. And then sort of in the middle, you've got a whole range of disciplines such as mind strategy, where you do a combination of both more traditional assignments, writing papers, but you'll also do teamwork, case analysis, and the like.
Perfect. The next question I would like to take, if you allow yourself, it's on the application procedure and requirements. So let's start with the requirements before your application. We expect applicants to have at least 8 years of professional work experience with at least 3 years of managerial or leadership experience. You must have an undergraduate degree. You need to submit a proof of English. You need to submit a motivational letter, of course, a cover letter, and a curriculum vitae, of course. And you would need to add 2 references to your application. There's no surprise in that formal criteria. I'd be happy to advise you on every single item of these criteria if you have any questions, but that's as far as the formal criteria is concerned. Let's talk about the application procedure. So the application starts on our website. It's a fully online application. You create a profile, you upload your documents, you enter your personal data and stuff. And once you submit your application, I will, and the admissions office will revise your applications for completeness and correctness. And if you, assuming that you meet all the formal criteria and that your application documents are complete, you will be invited for an interview, an online interview, of course. Based on that interview, you will receive an admission decision in a prompt manner. The interesting part is we are fully transparent when it comes to the like the catalog of questions you will be asked or that you will be assessed on during this interview. You can go to our website. There's basically a little game that you can play. You can assess yourself. You can assess your chances of your application on our website, because we're fully transparent when it comes to formal criteria and the criteria of the interview. The criteria during the interview are your motivation, your career progress, your academic progress, etc. There are no surprises, and we're not playing mind games during the interview. It's just one opportunity for us, or another opportunity for us, to get to know you and what you could bring to the program and how you would benefit from the program. So once you get the admission decision, you basically can, you're invited to join the Executive MBA by accepting the offer online. One question for you, Yusuf, that I noted is the importance of leadership in the Executive MBA. Can you talk about this field of study, please?
Yeah, thank you. You know, so an Executive MBA program, as you yourself, Thomas, sort of identified in the program presentation, is very much, so learning takes place in multiple dimensions in an Executive MBA program. Of course, there's the kind of more quote unquote normal learning, where the instructor works with the participants. But there's also a kind of reverse knowledge flow from the participant's experience to the instructor. So I am constantly learning from the people in the room because they have experience and knowledge that I don't know. And frankly, I want to know what they know. But then I think there's a third kind of knowledge sharing, which is among the participants. And I think this is one of the real major value addeds of an Executive MBA program. And that's why we require people to join us with leadership experience, because the quality of the conversation is much better with fellow leaders, because you can share real world, practical, this is what I did type knowledge, right? We as instructors and educators, our great strength is helping you as practical people understand how what you do is part of a broader framework, and we can help you sort of conceptualize and generalize the things that you do. But we can only do that if we have people in the room that have leadership experience and that can inform our thinking as well. So that's why leadership is super important for us in the program.
Thank you very much. In view of the time, I would like to move on to the very last, but I guess most important question for some, which is the question, is there any financial support? Are scholarships available? Yes, it's a clear answer. Yes, we offer a variety of financial support. We basically offer 3 streams of financial support. The first option is the Open World Scholarship. It's open to everybody who has achievements in strengthening open societies. I know it's very vague, but if you look at the definition, I think it makes sense. If you have questioned dogmas, hierarchies, privileges before, if you have broken glass ceilings before, if you are part of that struggle, you know, if you have like a history of fighting hierarchies and privileges, you're eligible for the Open Society, for the Open World Scholarship. Just from my experience, it does not exclude people from the corporate world, but most people who apply for it are coming from the humanitarian field, from the NGO field, because like most times, those organizations are dealing with humanitarian and ideational issues on the daily basis. But of course, everybody could apply for it. The second stream is the need-based scholarship, which is a non-competitive international scholarship. It only takes into consideration your individual income situation in your country of residence, because of course it makes a difference if you're a marketing manager in, let's say, Ukraine, or being at the same position but in Germany. It's a completely different income situation, and we take this into consideration. So wherever you are in the world, you're invited to apply for the need-based scholarship, which could cut your tuition by up to 50%. The third stream of financial support is our fellowships, our country-specific merit-based competitive fellowships. We offer a huge variety of them, and you can have a look at them on our website. Just open up the burger menu on the top right of our website, and you can just go to the merit-based fellowships. We offer a variety of them because we want to empower and encourage certain groups of our society which have not had access to higher education before. For example, we offer a fellowship for businesswomen in Central Asia, Russia, and Turkey. We have now established a fellowship for female leaders, which is eligible internationally. We have a fellowship for Romani managers in Central Europe. We have established an international fellowship for LGBTIQ managers, BAME fellowship in the UK, diversity fellowship in France, etc., etc. There's so many of them. That's why I strongly encourage you to book a one-on-one consultation with me to get personal advice on these fellowships and scholarships, because there's just so many of them, and I would be happy to advise you on which scholarship is better suited for you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now, unless I would like to conclude this session for tonight. Thank you, Shabnam, for joining us. Thank you, Yusuf, for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us online. You can watch this open day in a couple of days on our social media. Please follow us. Thank you, everybody. Good night.